else too.
I'm so impressed. I did not. So I am,
all good.
I'm recording now, or you are?
Great. No, I didn't press record, so I assume that you did.
Woo, here we go. Emelinda, over to you.
And in the interest of informed consent, everyone on this call is aware that it's being recorded, yes. Also, everyone was told that we have an observer who's not from your school community, Yali Bitan, who is a new board member for More Than Sex Ed, and we're really honored that they're joining us to hear from everybody. And we've got one more person who just joined us. Fabulous.
Oh, what? Go for it.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add, if anybody has at any time they would like to, they have a question or they want to raise their hand, one thing that we like to use is the Zoom reactions. So there's one that is a raise hand function. If you hit that, it moves your screen to the top, and so we can see your screen and we know that you have a question, and then when you're done, you can lower your hand and we'll know that your question has been answered.
We always start our classes with a review of group agreements, and this is a modified version that includes both English and Spanish. Is there anybody on this call who needs Spanish translation live to be able to participate fully? It is an
alguien
option.
que necesita que hablemos en español para poder entender todo que se va a decir. No creo, ¿eh? I don't think so based on who's on the call.
Okay. We will make that available, and thank you once again, Sarah, for making it possible for that to be available to include more members of your school community. That'll be available in the recording afterwards. So thank you so much, Sarah. Any concerns about honoring this set of group agreements for the conversation we're here to have this evening? Speaking from our own experience and avoiding generalizations or assumptions, acknowledging different values, beliefs, feelings, attitudes, and experiences related to sex and sexuality and how we all learned about it. I will not require anyone to share any personal information. And Jonathan and I are also not going to tell you anything specific that your child may have said in our classes. We respect their right to privacy. So sorry if you were hoping we'd give you some dirt. We promised them that we would keep some things private. And I hope that's okay with everybody too. Cool. Okay. So these are the workshop topics that we just wrapped up. We had 4 sessions with the 5th graders and 6 sessions with the 6th graders. And you all should have received a detailed explanation of what all these classes include, but just wanted to start off with an overview of what we were able to address at each grade level. Any overview questions about content before we get going? There were some, what exactly did you cover? So I have slides that are the same exact slides we used in class. I just pulled them right from the workshops to show you exactly what we showed to your students. So in the interest of time, I'm going to keep going. I think I put some of Sarah's questions from all of you in here next. Those were the 4 categories that we had the most curiosity from parents about what we talked about, how we addressed it, and how you can keep these conversations going at home in a way that reflects the values and messages you want your kids to take in. So the first one we wanted to cover was what we covered about puberty changes and hygiene needs. So I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan to talk through the same puberty slides that we used in class.
Awesome, thank you. And we also have, we are going to show those slides today. Oh, here they are. So this is the one that we typically start off with, things you probably already know about, some or lots of the changes your body's going to go through during puberty. The thing we really stress a lot is hormones, all of those chemical messengers in the body. We talk a lot about the physical changes that their bodies are going to go through, sweat, oil production, deodorant, big on deodorant, big on taking showers, big on keeping their bodies clean. We know that that's a big thing, that especially some of those active youth who are athletic and skateboard and all of those sorts of things. We have a slide we'll show you in a couple of minutes of some of the different products that they're going to be introduced to throughout puberty. The brain changes, In particular, emotions and feelings. We have a great couple of slides about feelings that we talk to them about. In particular, the kind of changes in their emotional needs and social needs that they're going to get, as particularly around the kind of needs that they will have and who they rely on and who they get their messages from. Sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes it's a benefit that a lot of the times they're going to start switching to their peers for their needs. What I always say to them is they're learning about how to grow their village outside of their home structure. So talking to their friends and relying on their friends, which is really big in terms of loyalty, their chosen family, those are big ideas that we talk to them about. So that's part of the prioritizing messages from peers and adults like parents less. We do stress that it is important to still talk to their adults, and we stress having trusted adults in their lives. Today, in fact, we had a slide where we asked them to pick 3 trusted adults in their lives, whether that is their parents, or an uncle or an aunt or a family friend or a minister, somebody in their life that they can go to with anything that they need. These changes can feel strange and scary, especially for parents and caregivers. But we also stress that these changes and these hormones and these feelings are going to lessen over time as well.
And the second question on the bottom is where we jump into a brainstorm about, it can feel scary or intimidating to think about all this new stuff, but it's all in service of being an adult, and being an adult is awesome. And there's a lot to look forward to there. What are you excited about? And they get to talk about being excited to drive a car. And some of them are excited to date or have a child someday. That's always really heartwarming. There's also in almost every class a child who brings up being excited to choose to drink alcohol. And that allows us to point out that teenage brain development means that there are specific risks associated with experimenting with substances during the teenage years. And we're not here to tell you don't do it. We're here to give you information about neurological development that means that it is a greater risk during your teenage years. So we got to slip that in there too.
We do get quite a few teens who like to say, well, I can start watching porn when I'm 18. And we do have a number of different slides and conversations about pornography we're going to show you at the end today.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions about that. The products that we talked about, this is an activity that we used. I will put them all up at the same time. We talked about them one at a time, but we explain shaving, pimples and zits and acne, pads and tampons, deodorant, needing more support for athletic events, whether you are growing breasts or a larger penis and testicles, hair getting oilier, and also a chest binder for a trans child who may be growing breasts and doesn't want to. Here's a device available to allow you to have the chest shape that you want to have.
One thing that I want to point out is that we oftentimes we have parents who want us to separate children by gender or by body type in order to have conversations about puberty and menstrual cycles and periods. We don't do that as a More Than Sex Ed practice. We believe it's important for everybody to hear about all of these different products, no matter what your gender, no matter what your body type is. So it's really important that everybody learned that tampons exist and how they're used, and if you are somebody that doesn't have a period, that you have tampons or pads or some sort of devices like that available for your friends who do have periods or for your partners that have periods.
And Melinda,
Sarah,
we just had
yes.
somebody else join, so I just wanted to give that person a chance to say hello and introduce themselves and let us know what grade their kids are.
Sure.
And make sure we don't need any translation. So who just joined? It says iPhone. Okay, well, maybe I'll give that person a sec if they're getting a snack or something. Carry on, sorry.
John, yes.
Yeah,
Thanks for raising your
hi.
hand.
In light of what was just said, my son is in the all-male cohort in 6th grade. And I'm sort of curious if you guys have any sort of high-level observations about how discussions were different in that cohort than in the mixed gender cohorts.
We sure do. It was a fun class. It was a rowdy class. It was a very different dynamic in that orange cohort. I would consider it all to be totally developmentally appropriate, and we have seen that kind of dynamic from groups of kids this age before. There can be sometimes a desire to sort of outperform each other in terms of making jokes, getting attention. And I felt good about the way that we handled it. And I was really impressed with the way that that group did receive and respond and engage and participate in their very unique way. And thinking, Jonathan, what do you want to add?
I think that there was a pretty normal curiosity about particularly about how different bodies work. We know that there were nobody in that class experienced menstruation, but we felt it was really important that although nobody in that class experiences menstruation, that everybody learned about it and had a good understanding. There were some people that might have had questions that really had no idea how things worked, but otherwise mostly curiosity and interest, and everybody learned together. Kate, did you have a question?
Yeah, just quickly, I am curious on the topic of hygiene. I know we're in this kind of long transition between us as parents really overseeing their, bodies so much of the time into them taking it on entirely. And I wonder if you could just give a template of, I think I'm kind of feeling my way through it, but just where do we speak up if we, I'm thinking about both my 3rd and 6th grader. They just take my words really differently. I don't want to embarrass them or put too much weight on things like sneaky armpits or, but I also want it to be something that I can say or recommend and encourage, the right cleanliness, the right products. I don't know. I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to ignore it. And I don't want to embarrass them. Maybe just like a little template about that kind of transition into letting them handle it.
I think that they've all had this class now. So you have a 3rd grader and a kid who was in the class. But if they've had this class, we definitely brought up body odor changing and the importance of a product that maybe you didn't use when you were younger that you are going to need to start using. So we did give that message. This is not really optional. You're gonna need it. And so they've gotten that message from us already, which I hope gives you an in to have that conversation at home as well. And it might be easiest if you start with just buying it and putting it on the bathroom counter. I got this for you and it's here. And if you don't like it, we'll try a different brand. I will buy you a new stick of deodorant every day for the next month until you find one you like. I don't know if you're up for that. That might be a little fun.
I actually say with deodorant in specific, it was actually really fun to bring them to smell their own deodorant. That was really, that was an exciting task. But like, I don't want to call out acne, but I want to support, or like, I want to be able to ask, like, what do you want to happen here? I also would like to do some things about it, it's hard. It's just like a trade-off,
That's hard. I think that ask feeling is a good one. Observations are not criticism. Name what you can see without putting labels or judgments or values on it. It looks like you've had some zits on your nose lately. Can I ask you if you've noticed that and how you're feeling about it? I would be really happy to help you try out some different kinds of face wash. There's a gajillion brands. We could do a face mask together. If maybe a spa day at home is a real fun way to sample a bunch of different products and see what you like. And if it's a thing that you can do together, You know, here is my nightly skincare routine, and here's what I do to take care of this, that, and the other. And you might need different products, and we can figure out what those are together.
That's great. Thank you so much. You
I think
guys
what's
are
really-
awesome. Like this approach, you're blowing my mind. You're just awesome. Thank you.
We do what
Yali?
we can.
Yeah, sorry. This isn't really what I'm mostly supposed to be an observer, but I just wanted to add something that I think would have like been really helpful for like me thinking about growing up is like let them know within that like everything they're going through is normal. Like it's very normal, as you know, like Jonathan was saying, as the hormones come in, their body's going to have those changes. And I think that like letting them know that it's normal will help them to not feel as judged. Just my 2
Yeah.
cents.
That is the message that we reinforce and repeat. It's super normal. And there's a wide range of normal.
Yeah, there's also a wide range of like how people respond and react to hearing about these changes in their bodies. Some people just like hate hearing like, oh, my voice is cracking, stop reminding me of that. Or, oh, I have acne on my face, don't tell me about it. But it's a fine line being able to like have these conversations without making it feel like you're shaming your students and your youth and children. And unfortunately, we don't have all the answers because every child is completely different, but some gentle nudges or just asking in non-judgmental way, like, hey, how would you feel about changing your, we buy some different soap. Or I like the idea of like taking your kids to the store and like everyone smelling their own deodorant and seeing what they like and what works for them.
That was legitimately fun. I highly recommend. I've never smelled so many deodorants. It was great.
That's wonderful.
Pre-COVID, I guess.
Are there any other puberty changes related, addressing hygiene needs kind of questions before we move on? I feel like the feelings and attraction piece is sort of our transition question, because those are a lot of new feelings that come up along with the hormonal changes of puberty. And we link that your skin breaking out is because of the same thing that is causing you to have a lot of sexual thoughts that may feel kind of intrusive and you weren't having a few years ago. There was a question about, is it normal for boys this age to have a lot of sexual thoughts? Yes, it is. And some of your students shared with us the questions that they have about sexually explicit things that they've heard of, but may not fully understand. And it is totally normal. We did not hear anything from any of your students that made us really concerned about what they might be being exposed to. And some of your students had some pieces of information about fairly graphic things, and it was totally normal. So the first thing we want to talk about is the feelings slide that we use in the puberty changes class. We will explain that hormone changes and brain development affect moods and cause mood swings. Feelings are all okay. There are no bad or wrong feelings, but everyone is responsible for their actions and their choices. Sexual desire and attraction can become stronger during puberty as a result of hormone changes, and that exploring these feelings in private is totally normal. Many people touch their own bodies to figure out what feels good to them sexually, and this is called masturbation. It is not something that's okay to do in front of somebody else. That could be considered sexual harassment, but in the privacy of your own space, we recommend washing your hands before and after, but as long as you've done that, it's not possible to hurt yourself by touching your own body. And these intense feelings will mellow out as you get older. So that was info that we shared with all of your students. And Jonathan, do you want to take the definition slides that we used when we talked about attraction? There was a question about how we addressed attraction with 5th graders, and we did not. The feeling slide you're seeing here, we did share with the 5th graders, and that experiencing sexual desire is something that will become more noticeable, perhaps, maybe not. But the next slides were only in the 6th grade classes, just to clarify.
So when we do our attraction lessons, we really try to lay out very plain language. We also tell them that their personal values regarding sexuality and sexual orientation is their personal values. We don't tell anyone how to feel or what to feel. What is really important to us is that they know that gay people exist in the world, and that is a reality that we feel it's important that they know about and understand. Um, so um, this is so the first slide, we talked about the fairly plain definitions of gay, lesbian, attraction, or the strong liking or desire, particularly sexual desire. And then on this slide, the words bisexual and pansexual. There was always some confusion about these two words. Bisexual, we typically use to describe someone who is attracted to people of more than one gender, and pansexual, someone who experiences attraction without regard for gender. Typically, pansexual is used when somebody will say, I'm attracted to a person, I'm attracted to a soul, I'm attracted to being attracted to other people. This is how we talk about pansexual. Straight and heterosexual have the same definitions, someone who is attracted to people of another gender. Asexual, queer, and homophobia. Asexual is a newer term. Relatively, someone who is not sexually attracted to other people. This still sometimes falls under the queer umbrella, also a very important idea for them to talk about. We do have many students who say that they are not sure that they feel any sexual attraction to another person, and they're not sure if they're going to. We don't encourage anyone in any particular direction of feelings or attraction. We feel it's really important that they spend some time exploring that on their own. One of our circles of sexuality is sensuality, exploring your own feelings and who you like and what pleases you. Queer is an umbrella term for someone who feels that they do not fit cultural norms for sexual orientation. For the most part, the kids at New School just like totally got all of these things, totally get all of these concepts really easily. Like it was not that hard. And even students who, for one reason or another, were like, uh-oh, this is going to be a hard concept. They were like, oh no, we know what queer people are. We know what transgender means. That's not shocking. We get it. Move on. So we did not experience homophobia or heterosexism in the classes with New School.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I do want to address that the question asked how we talked about dating and attraction, and we actually did not spend a lot of time really talking about the particulars of dating, because that is really broad and means a lot of different things to different people and is largely a personal question. We talked about experiencing different kinds of attraction, and we talked about crushes. In the 5th grade attraction workshop, we talked about, what do you do with a crush? Do you talk to a friend? Do you try and find out more information? Do you talk to a trusted adult? Do you do nothing? Major point of that activity is that you don't have to do anything with a crush. It can just feel good to feel those feelings because it's fun to have a crush. So if you are getting questions about dating, that's a conversation we didn't get to, and I would really encourage you to go there. What does that mean? Are you talking about wanting to hold hands with someone in the hallway? Are you talking about wanting to get a motel room together? Those are real different. What does dating mean to you? What would it mean to be going out with someone? And if you're going to have that conversation, then talking about how do you break up with someone in a way that's respectful is also an important component. That's the thing that we do in high school programs. How do you ask someone out? How do you break up with someone? And so if you are getting questions within your family about that, that's an excellent conversation. What is respectful dating? What does that mean? What are cultural assumptions or expectations that may not be in line with your values? Rich opportunity for conversation there that we did not have time for.
One thing that we did talk about a lot was friendships. That's a really important value for us, is how to maintain and build friendships and how to have those intimate friendships with each other, particularly people their own age. What are some red flags for healthy and unhealthy friendships? And we like to frame the idea of a future or a possible or potential dating or romantic or even marriage partner as a good friend. and what does a good friend mean to you? And we spend a lot of time really stressing this idea of like healthy, emotionally feeding friendships. That's really important for us.
Another question we got about a fifth grader who's worried about not having had a crush on anyone yet. Other kids are talking about their crushes, and now my kid is talking about being worried about not having had any crushes yet. So I think that this is a great opportunity to talk about peer pressure, and if you're feeling like you're supposed to be feeling a certain way just because other people are talking about it. There are a lot of kids that talk about having crushes because everyone else is, even though they're not actually having those feelings. And that can be a valuable thing to lift up. I think one of my all-time favorite things I saw in the question box, and I don't remember if it was from this school, but the really excellent question, how do you tell if you're asexual or you just don't like anybody you know? Really good question. I don't know. If you're 10 years old and you don't know anybody who's worth having a crush on, how can you tell? That's super valid. You're probably not going to meet your soulmate in 5th grade. That's okay. You're allowed to have high standards. You deserve someone who's awesome.
This is our complex person or complex human model. Love this model a lot. This is how we talk about the differences in biological sex, which we didn't do. We did do some anatomy and puberty lessons and the different phenotypes, what are usually called male and female. We often use the language of assigned male at birth and assigned female at birth. Romantic, sexual, and romantic orientation, sexual orientation, and sexual behavior, which we do separate those three things out because we know that those are three different things. Somebody's sexual orientation, who they're sexually attracted to, the people who they date, and their romantic orientation is all going to be different from their sexual behavior, who they actually end up having sex with. As they get older. These are very different ideas. We didn't dive too deeply into gender roles and different ideas of gender identity with this session, but that is something that we talk about in a later age.
I think with 6th grade, we did a session that was focused on the harmful impacts of gender stereotypes. That was what we spent a lot of time talking about, and how we could dismantle those messages that people are supposed to fit into categories.
One of the last questions in the relationships category is, what is the best way to encourage the boys to be upstanders if they see other boys speaking to or about girls in sexually degrading ways or sexualized ways? This is something that we stress throughout our entire program. This is particularly really important for me, and this is one of the reasons why we don't separate out particular lessons by gender, and everybody, including the orange class, which is all boys, get the same messages that we give to every other student. Some of the really important ways that we do this is by, for example, talking about menstruation with everyone, including a class of all boys, because we know that this is one of the causes of misogyny, is just this idea that people who menstruate are dirty or bad, or there's something weird about them for 5 days out of the month. We also know that there's a statistic we like to share typically with the older students, that 80% of college-aged young men don't like to hear sexist language. That means
And
that,
yet, overwhelmingly believe the majority of their peers are okay with it. I'm sorry, I stepped on your punchline.
Nope, you did it.
I was too excited.
This is a statistic that we really like. We really like to share this a lot. And we see this happen in classes all the time, where we get messages or we get questions in the question box that are like, that will say things like, I wish the other boys wouldn't be so sexist. I've gotten these messages. And then, but out loud, sometimes going along with sexist jokes or sexist language. What's really important is to help encourage that anti-sexist or anti-misogynistic behavior and language. Also, starting at home, talking about women and talking about different bodies in a way that is supportive and fulfilling, and talking about everyone being normal and being a person that exists and is real in the world.
Some tools we talked about in, I'm trying to remember which class now. Uh, interjections when you aren't quite sure what to say, but you know that somebody else just said something not okay. Ew. Made me
Okay,
laugh
we
when
did that
Jonathan
today.
used- That's how long this week's been. Just asking your kid, you know, if someone said something that was really not okay with you, what would you say to let them know that you weren't okay? Because sometimes people might think that other people are going to go along with it, or will laugh and think it's funny. And, you know, having some scripts in your back pocket for how to respond, it, you know, ew, or dude, or bro, gross. Having just some one-liners for like, no, I am not okay with that. I do not co-sign that joke, can be really helpful.
One of the scenarios we talked about today was the scenario of a young woman at a school dance who a boy has taken her out to the dance to go like have a slow dance, and then takes her aside to like start kissing her without her consent. And we had a lot of conversation about how can you as a friend intervene in that situation? What can you do as a bystander? We had some really rich discussions about some of these topics. We can't share all of the things that we talked about, but it was really good.
Practicing with sexual jokes in entertainment, there is no shortage of, you know, jokes at the expense of women, queer people, fat people in entertainment. Those kinds of hurtful jokes where a minority group is the punchline. You can practice lifting up. Ew, I don't care for that. I do not co-sign that as humorous. And use those opportunities to get a conversation going and see if this is something that their friends group might laugh at, or if they're going to roll their eyes and say, no, nobody thinks that funny. That movie's from the 90s. A lot of humor has not aged very well, and that's a great opportunity to revisit new cultural standards. I think that several people are here because they wanted to hear how we talked about pornography, and that's our next slide. Any questions about relationships, attractions, dating, feelings? Should we talk about porn? Let's talk about porn.
Give me one
did not-
second, Emma. Sorry, Emma Linda. We've had a few more people join. Hi, Erica. Hi, Roxana. Hi, Juno. Hi, Jay. Roxana, vas bien sin español, ¿verdad? Okay. All right. Great. Carry on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for checking. These are the talking points that we shared with the sixth graders about pornography. This slide did not appear in the fifth grade program. I don't recall whether we got any specific questions about pornography from fifth graders, but I don't believe so.
So when we talk about pornography, and there's a couple of questions about this, we frame pornography as especially for young students, it's normal to be curious about sex and sexually arousing material like pornography. We don't want anyone to feel weird or ashamed for it, and we don't want to shame pornography as an industry itself. But we do stress that the law says that only adults 18 or older can watch porn. Because it may give dangerously misleading ideas about sex. As you can see, in the slide in this image, there's like an actor who is portraying Superman is being held up by a wire. We talk about the special effects of pornography and the editing and all of the sets and the staff that go into creating a fantasy, and how that is a fantasy and not realistic portrayals of sexual relationships. And in particular, not realistic portrayals of women's sexuality, or how, in particular, women and femmes should be treated in sexual situations. We also talk about some porn is violent or disturbing, and these are things that you cannot unsee. And most importantly, we know that if somebody is showing pornographic images to students. Sometimes this is from other older students, sometimes students their age, and sometimes it is from adults and family friends. We think it's really important that they talk to somebody about that, a trusted adult, if they have a therapist or counselor, a parent who they can talk to, it's really important that they know that showing pornography to especially a younger person, a younger student, is a type of sexual abuse and can be a type of sexual harassment.
I'm looking for hands raised if anybody has questions. We recognize that families may have different values around pornography, and I hope that we didn't overstep any boundaries. We encourage you to keep the conversation going and add on to these talking points what your family's values around this are. And if you haven't had that conversation with your co-parent or need to do some personal exploration around what you think is developmentally appropriate and within your family's values, I encourage you to take the time that you need to do that. Michael, yes.
Yeah, not directly to pornography, but the subtopic here is if you talked about pedophilia and in light of all these online boards and communication tools, the fact that there are predators out there and how to detect that.
We did talk about online safety in addition to the pornography. That was in a separate workshop, but we encourage students to realize that anyone could pretend to be anyone online, not to give out any personal information, not to make plans to meet someone that you met online. We acknowledge that that's something adults do, and the precautions that adults take if they're going to meet someone that they met on a dating app in a public place, letting someone know where you're going. We emphasize that that's one of those very different once you are over 18 kinds of decisions. Are there other online? Go ahead, Jonathan.
We do have a couple of slides where we stress things like sexting, especially for underage people. So sharing, taking pictures of an underage body, whether it's themselves or another person, and sharing them, and the legal issues behind that. We also have a slide where we go into, there's 4 different ideas. The searchability of an image, how images can be found very easily, the spreadability, how you can take a picture, send it to a friend, they can upload it to the internet where it can then be downloaded hundreds of thousands of times and shared hundreds of thousands of times. The idea of the invisible audience, that there is an audience out there that you are not familiar with, that you don't even know. This goes along with the spreadability and searchability, and also that images that are posted online are there forever. They're never actually, they can never be taken down, no matter how many times you try to delete it. Another thing that we do talk about is if you are putting images or videos of your young body on the internet, say in bathing suits or playing in a pool party, there's a YouTube algorithm that can actually just find other videos like that, so that somebody can sit on YouTube and look for a kid's birthday party, and then YouTube will help them find videos of kids' birthday parties. This is a very real thing, and it's a very real concern, and we talk to your students about that.
To be mindful that the internet can feed addictions in that way, and that the videos that you put of yourself online may be feeding other people's unhealthy interests. So check yourself before you hit post, send, or upload. Thank you for the question. Others about pornography before we move along? We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure that you are getting the conversation that you came here for. And I realize, as I'm sure you do, that there is so much more conversation we could have than time we have in this call, but that's why you're there for the rest of their lives. This was a great question about talking to kids when they accidentally see or hear parents engaged in sexual acts. And I think that this ties back into some other questions about wanting kids to receive the message that sex, contrary to media's popular message pushing, is really about love and connection and togetherness at its best. That's not the case all of the time. But if you are engaging in sexual behaviors with an adult that you share a household with and are raising children with, I'm going to take the risk of making the assumption that there is love and care and connection and mutual respect involved. I hope so. I want that for you. I want that for your kids too when they're old enough, if that's what they want for themselves. But the general professional guidance on when kids see or hear adults having sex, address it. Don't try and pretend that it never happened. Address it. Not saying anything says a lot, and it reinforces the idea that this is something that is taboo and should not be talked about, and that leaves a kid more vulnerable to harm and abuse. Name that it was probably awkward. You can be honest with how you're feeling about it. You are allowed to have privacy from your child, and that's a thing that you can tell them. You're allowed to have an adult life that doesn't include them. You're allowed to put a lock on your bedroom door. And if this is a situation you've been in, I encourage you to invest in a little bit of hardware and a screwdriver so that you can give yourself some more privacy. It's important that a child know that they didn't do anything wrong by accidentally walking in. I mean, maybe if you have household rules around knocking that they forgot, that is a very minor infraction, and you definitely don't want your child to feel like they are in trouble for something that was just an accident. You are also not doing anything wrong. You are allowed to sleep with your partner. And I think that it's important not to frame it as though you feel guilty and you owe your child an apology. You don't have to apologize for having sex with your partner. And it is an opportunity to model that, yeah, your other parent and I love each other, and sometimes we want to feel good together, and that's a thing that we're allowed to do as adults. I'm sorry that it made you uncomfortable. Do you have any questions? The other really important thing is not to answer questions that they didn't ask. Some parents get into over-explaining, and you don't need to answer any questions that weren't asked. They probably know what sex is by now. They've been through our class. I hope they do.
I think with the last question, which is a really good one, how do we explain that sex can be a loving act rather than something taboo or gross, while also being realistic that exploration doesn't necessarily always mean love? So one thing that we do is, or that I do at least personally, when talking about sex and sexual behavior, I stopped using the word lovemaking. That can really frame the idea of sex and sexual exploration, especially at a young age, in a very values-based way. We don't want people to think that engaging in risky sexual behavior and promiscuity is the best way to engage in sexual exploration, or that having sex with a partner doesn't require love. We teach and we know that when people have an emotional connection to each other, they have a better sex life and a better sexual relationship. That's a really important thing. But not being scared to engage in those conversations is really important. Not making groaning or like uncomfortable sounds. Maybe practicing these conversations with your students is really helpful and really important. If you're watching a movie or a TV show where there is sex happening on screen, instead of like covering their eyes so fast that you're actually slapping them in the face, have a healthy conversation about what they just saw and what that means. And maybe talking about family values regarding sex and sexuality. What's really important is that they hear these values coming from you, their parents, which can be kind of uncomfortable. But as we say in our classroom agreements, lean into your discomfort and be brave with us. Because you are overall their most important sexuality educator. We have done our best to give them as much public health information as possible, but you are really the ones shaping their values around sex and sexuality.
And I would add to that, because it connects back to another question that we addressed earlier about encouraging young people, and especially young boys or those who will grow up to be men and boys, that sentence derailed right in the middle, starting over, take two. When something comes up on media that you're watching, a sex scene that maybe when they were younger, you might have hit pause real quick and fast forwarded through. You could turn to your child and say, hey, quick comfort level check-in. Are you okay with us watching this together? And model that safety check. Are you okay with us watching this together? This is a sex scene. Is that going to be weird for you? You know, checking in like that is a really good time anytime a sexual topic comes up. Not everybody is at the same comfort level with this. My circle of friends does this all the time. We like to make sexy jokes. That's a fun thing that a circle of peers is doing from young ages. And a group of kids the age of your kids might be starting to experiment with joking around about sex stuff. That's totally developmentally normal and appropriate. Knowing to say, quick check-in, is everybody okay if we keep talking about this? That's a really good way to teach your child from a young age before it is really violent or harmful behavior, that it's only fun if everybody's having fun, and we can check in and give people the opportunity to say, let's talk about something else. I encourage you to try that. I feel like we have touched on all of the questions that were submitted in advance. I realize that we did not go into the depth that we could on any one of them, but we have just a couple of minutes left of our time together. And unfortunately, we don't have the use of the chat, but I do want to make space for any final thoughts, questions, and you can definitely get in touch with us after tonight as well. How's everybody feeling? How are your kids doing? We liked them a lot, by the way. Nice work. Keep it up. Samantha, yeah.
Just a quick question. If you have an older sibling and then a younger one, you know, do you feel like these should be separate conversations with the older child, or do you encourage? And I know that obviously I'm not going to start the porn with the whole family, but you know, like, do you? Yeah, just any words around siblings and talking about some of these topics. And just my kids are only like almost 2 years apart, so 1 grade separate. So
that's an awesome question. I think that separate conversations is probably my recommendation. You know your kids and their relationship better than I do. The getting one-on-one attention from a parent is a validation totally separate from whatever the conversation is about. And I think that framing and that context for something this important is really valuable. That it says, I'm thinking about you and the rest of your life, and I want you to have this information and support to make good decisions and have wonderful relationships. And I will have this conversation with your younger sister when she's old enough, but she's not right now. This is about you.
One thing that happened in my household is my sister and I received the same book when we were kids, so that we had the same foundational text. I don't recommend that book now because it was written in the 80s. But one book that I would totally recommend is It's Perfectly Normal. It's totally appropriate for students your age and something that can be shared with siblings.
Students your kids' ages.
Yes, students your kids' ages, excuse me. It's a super good book. It's super inclusive and liberal, and it goes into many different kinds of bodies. Absolutely
There's a
recommended.
recommended books page on our website. If you go to morethansex-ed.org, there is a tab for parents, parents and caregivers that has resources recommended broken down by age. So there's a lot of great books, and It's Perfectly Normal by Roby Harris and Michael Emberley is on there.
I read that to my 10-year-old niece recently, and she was kind of squishy about it, but she loved it. And I'm really glad that I got to have those conversations with her, because my sister is really uncomfortable about it. And I'm like, that's cool.
The squishy feelings are totally normal. And if your child told you that they thought our class was gross or weird, or they already knew it all and they were bored, that's fine. And we are very confident that they took in more than they are reflecting back. And you can just let that simmer for a while and maybe use tonight's meeting as an opportunity to say, I just learned more about what you learned in your sex ed classes. And I was wondering, how did they talk about blah, 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 because it sounded, you could also use the opportunity to say, wow, it sounds like your sex ed class covered a lot more than I learned when I was your age. We didn't talk about any of these things, how does that feel? Comparing what you received may help them to process and better understand that actually they got a really good quality program, guys. I'm not taking it personally, it's fine. No, your kids were great. And I hope that they enjoyed it. And if they have been rather tight-lipped about what the experience was like for them, that's also very normal. So I hope we gave you a little more of a window into what we were covering. And we are at 6:01 now, and I'm happy to stay and answer more questions if there are others, but if folks are ready to get on with your evening, thank you so much for taking the time to get together with us tonight.
Well, and I
This
just
was
want to thank you,
really
Emma, Linda,
wonderful.
and Jonathan for being with us, and Yali for being part of the steward of this great organization. My child was one of the question box stuffers in the 6th grade. So thank you very much for also answering our questions this evening. Really, really helpful and generous of you to stay on. I'll leave the link open for a few more minutes, but huge thanks to you both, all three of you.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate that. And I just want to turn the compliment back to your children's school, because we are generous people, but we didn't do this for free. They paid for the extra session for us to be here. So your children's school prioritizes this highly enough to
All
make this
right, yay for
possible.
them.
Thank you, everybody. Everybody who has a student in the 6th grade who you told me their names, I do remember them. They were all great kids, and it was a really fun opportunity to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Take care. Give your kids our best. Have a great
And Jay,
evening.
I love your wall art. So beautiful.
Take care, everyone. Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys. I'm so impressed. But I feel like I'm over here like typing phrases you're saying. Just it's like I just love your framing. I love your phrasing. I feel like I need a recording of you just talking. It
You
just,
have one now.
I mean, that's legit. I've got it all
That's true.
quoted down here in my notes too. So thank you. Thank you for
Thank
I'm
you.
really
being on
flattered.
this. It's deeply encouraging to my soul that this is how this is.
If you
being
want to
framed.
put that in writing and email it to me, we would love to have parent testimonials for our website. That marketing material is gold.
That's great. I'll do that. You guys are awesome. You deserve
No
that.
pressure.
Thank you.
do have a
Thank you for being
recording.
here. It means a lot.
You are still recording, by the way, Sarah.
Yes, I am. I've got every word of Kate Clem's mouth right here.
You can just have it. You can quote that right up. All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Appreciate it.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
night. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Here. All right, guys, what a hit you are. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Really
That was
grateful.
great.
Yeah, I mean, we could just go on for hours, you know.